when I got sicker than I ever in my life. And I couldn't get into a detox. I tried for a year and a half because of going to cardiac arrest at one.
My wife got very sick, and she ended up being bedridden for 2 years. And then 6 years ago, actually January 27th will be 6 years, she passed.
Welcome to American Dream. Every January, outreach workers and volunteers move through Texas shelters, downtown streets, highway underpasses, vehicles, wooded areas, and other places never designed for people to live. They are trying to answer a question that sounds simple. How many people in this state have nowhere safe and stable to sleep tonight? According to the latest federal point-in-time data, 28,031 people were experiencing homelessness across Texas on a single night in January of 2025. 12,161 of them were unsheltered, meaning they were sleeping outside, in vehicles, abandoned structures, or other locations never intended to serve as a home. That is more than 2 out of every 5 people included in the statewide count. The figure is large, but it is also narrow. A point-in-time count is a snapshot. It records one night under one federal definition through local systems whose methods may vary. A person missed by an outreach team does not stop being homeless. A family moving between relatives, a worker paying for one more motel night, or a young person sleeping on a different couch each week may have no real housing security and still remain outside the numbers shown to the public. Texas Homeless Network estimated that at least 62,000 Texans experienced homelessness at some point during 2024. The one-night count shows how many people were visible to the system at a specific moment. The annual estimate reveals movement into and through homelessness over time. People losing housing, entering shelter, returning to the street, finding a temporary placement, or disappearing from services before stability is secured. Across a state as large as Texas, homelessness does not have one appearance. It may be a tent near a downtown service corridor, a car parked far from public attention, a family inside an emergency shelter, or an older adult sleeping somewhere outreach teams may not reach before sunrise. In rural counties, distance can hide the crisis. In large cities, visibility can create the opposite illusion, making the problem look concentrated within a few blocks, even when housing instability extends far beyond them. Official counts are necessary because funding and planning depend on them, but a number becomes politically convenient when it is treated as the boundary of the crisis. Governments can count shelter entries, outreach contacts, referrals, and cleared encampments. None of those measures, by itself, proves that a person obtained a permanent home or remained housed after the program ended. The most honest reading is not that 28,000 people define the entire Texas crisis. It is that, on one winter night, the system identified 28,031 people who had already crossed the line into homelessness. To understand why so many Texans reach that line, and why some cannot cross back, the story must move beyond the count and into the chain of events that takes a home away. Texas is often described as a place where work is available and people can still build a life through effort. That promise is real for many residents, but it becomes dangerously incomplete when wages, rent, transportation, and health costs are examined together. A person does not have to be unemployed to be at risk of homelessness. In Texas, working and being able to afford housing are no longer the same thing. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition estimated that in 2025, a Texas worker needed to earn $24.87 an hour to afford a modest one-bedroom rental without spending more than 30% of income on housing. A modest two-bedroom required $29.64 an hour. Yet many jobs that keep Texas cities running pay far less. Home health aides, fast food workers, cashiers, janitors, warehouse laborers, restaurant cooks, and construction laborers often earn below even the one-bedroom housing wage. That difference is where emergencies become evictions. When most of a paycheck is already committed to rent, there is little room for a medical bill, reduced work hours, a broken transmission, an insurance increase, or a family crisis. A worker who loses a vehicle may also lose access to a job in a state where distance often separates affordable housing from employment. Missed shifts reduce income. Reduced income creates late rent. Late rent brings fees, court notices, and the possibility of removal. Once housing is lost, the damage accelerates. Without a stable address, it becomes harder to receive documents, apply for benefits, complete a background check, or convince a landlord that the next lease will be different. Security deposits, application fees, unpaid balances, and an eviction record can close doors even after income returns. Someone may find work again and remain homeless because entering housing costs more than surviving another night outside. Illness, disability, domestic violence, family breakdown, untreated trauma, addiction, and mental health conditions can push the same chain forward from different directions. Personal decisions matter. Some people damage relationships, reject treatment, spend money destructively, or behave in ways that make housing harder to keep. Ignoring those choices would be dishonest. But treating every person on the street as the author of every condition surrounding them is equally dishonest. Choice becomes constrained when the alternatives are unsafe, unaffordable, inaccessible, or already exhausted. The path into homelessness is rarely one dramatic fall. More often, it is a sequence of smaller losses that removes every margin for recovery. By the time a tent appears beneath an overpass, the crisis may already include lost income, untreated illness, broken relationships, debt, missing identification, and months of unstable sleep. The public sees the final location. The person living there has already survived the chain that produced it. In Texas, losing housing does not end the emergency. It exposes the body to another threat, one that cannot be negotiated with, postponed, or paid next month. The heat. In Texas, extreme heat is not simply uncomfortable weather. For a person living outside, it can control where the day begins, how far the body can move, whether medication remains usable, and whether sleep is possible after sunset. The National Weather Service recorded 7 days at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit at Dallas-Fort Worth in 2025. That was a milder count than the previous 2 summers, but for someone without air conditioning, even one such day can become a medical emergency. By late morning, shade begins to disappear from sidewalks, parking lots, and open lots. Concrete stores heat, metal benches become painful to touch, and a tent that provided privacy overnight can trap dangerous temperatures during the afternoon. People may be forced to move repeatedly, carrying water, blankets, identification, clothing, and everything else they cannot safely leave behind. Rest becomes difficult at the exact moment the body needs to conserve energy. Public advice is straightforward. Stay indoors, drink water, reduce activity, and use an air-conditioned building. The problem is that these instructions assume access. A person living outside may not have enough water to remain hydrated, a phone with service to locate a cooling center, or money for transportation. Dehydration can also make judgment less reliable. While chronic illness, certain medications, alcohol, or substance use can make the body less able to regulate heat. Cities do provide relief, but availability on a map is not the same as access on the street. In Houston, libraries and multi-service centers may operate as cooling locations during normal business hours, while some community centers open only after scheduled programs end. During an activated public health heat emergency, people without adequate transportation can call 311 for a free ride to a designated center. That ride, however, is limited to travel to and from the cooling center, and hours may vary by location. These details matter. Someone must know the emergency plan has been activated, find a working phone, wait for transportation, and arrive while the building is open. They must decide whether to leave behind a camp that could be cleared or robbed, carry their possessions with them, or separate from people and animals they rely on for safety. When the center closes, the person may return to the same pavement that was dangerous hours earlier, now radiating stored heat into the night. Outreach teams distribute bottled water, sunscreen, cooling towels, and information, and these efforts can prevent suffering and save lives. Yet emergency supplies are not a substitute for a safe indoor place. A bottle of water answers the next hour. It does not answer where someone will recover from heat exhaustion, refrigerate medicine, charge a phone, take a shower, or sleep without being awakened and moved. The Texas heat exposes the difference between offering relief and guaranteeing protection. The system can open a door, but the person outside must still reach it, enter it, and survive after it closes. For older adults, veterans, people with disabilities, and those living with chronic illness, that distance can be even harder to cross. Homelessness does not affect everybody in the same way. A younger person in good health may still be exhausted, injured, or traumatized by life outside, but age, disability, and chronic illness can turn the same sidewalk into a far more dangerous place. The people described here are not less willing to recover. They are often the people given the smallest physical and financial margin in which recovery can happen. Texas counted 6,385 people age 55 or older experiencing homelessness on a single night in 2025. Nearly 2,900 of them were unsheltered. For an older adult living on a fixed income, a rent increase does not create more hours to work, while arthritis, heart disease, reduced mobility, and cognitive decline can make every part of street survival more difficult. A shelter may technically have an available bed, but that bed is not meaningful access when a person cannot climb the steps, sleep safely on a floor mat, stand in a long intake line, or manage a crowded communal space. Medication can be lost, stolen, damaged by heat, or taken at the wrong time when sleep and meals are unpredictable. A wheelchair, walker, oxygen device, or other medical equipment also requires space, charging, transportation, and protection that many temporary settings were never designed to provide. Veterans face a different contradiction. The 2025 count identified 1,907 veterans experiencing homelessness across Texas, including 790 who were unsheltered. Veteran status can provide access to specialized housing and health programs, but those resources do not connect themselves to the person sleeping outside. Records must be located, eligibility established, appointments reached, and trust rebuilt, sometimes after years of trauma, isolation, addiction, or failed contact with institutions. Service-connected benefits may offer income or care, but they cannot repair every broken relationship, eliminate every housing barrier, or guarantee that an affordable unit exists near treatment. Some veterans disengage from assistance or reject the conditions placed before them. Personal agency still matters, but calling that rejection a simple refusal ignores the possibility that the offer felt unsafe, confusing, physically inaccessible, or disconnected from the person's actual needs. HUD also identified 5,247 Texans experiencing chronic homelessness in the 2025 count. More than 3,260 of them were unsheltered. Chronic homelessness is not simply a description of someone who has remained outside for a long time. It often reflects the collision of prolonged housing instability with a disabling condition that makes the path back much harder. This is where government language can become cruel without sounding cruel. A person may be recorded as missing an appointment, failing to complete paperwork, refusing shelter, or becoming non-compliant. The record shows a failed step. It may not show that the person could not walk to the office, lost the document during an encampment clearing, could not understand the instructions, or feared losing everything they owned while standing in line. Vulnerability is not an abstract category. It determines who can carry their belongings through the heat, who can recover after a night without sleep, and who may not survive another disruption. The next question is what daily life looks like when these people are not only exposed to illness and exhaustion, but repeatedly told to move from the public spaces where they are trying to survive. For a person living outside in Texas, survival depends on access to public space. A shaded area beneath a bridge may offer protection from the afternoon sun. A sidewalk near a service center may provide access to food, transportation, outreach workers, or a public restroom. A group of tents may create risks for the surrounding community, but it may also provide the only protection people have from theft, assault, and complete isolation. Residents and business owners have legitimate concerns. Encampments can block walkways, create fire hazards, collect waste, damage parks, and expose everyone nearby to unsafe conditions. People should be able to use sidewalks, transit stations, playgrounds, and public buildings without fear. Treating these concerns as imaginary would be unfair. The harder question is what enforcement accomplishes when the people being removed have nowhere lawful and available to go. Texas law makes intentionally or knowingly camping in a public place without authorization a Class C misdemeanor. Cities may also enforce local restrictions on camping, sitting, lying down, or obstructing sidewalks. From the perspective of government, these rules protect public order. From the street, they can turn the basic acts of sleeping, storing belongings, and protecting the body from weather into behavior that attracts warnings, citations, or removal. A cleared site produces an immediate and visible result. Trash is collected, tents disappear, and a sidewalk becomes usable again. But when no shelter or housing placement is available, the homelessness itself has not been removed. It has been transferred to another underpass, another wooded area, another vehicle, or another location farther from transportation and outreach. The public space becomes cleaner, while the person becomes harder to find. The city of Austin openly acknowledges this contradiction. It states that the city does not have enough emergency housing for everyone experiencing homelessness, and that people displaced from closed encampments often move somewhere less visible, return to the same site, or relocate to places that are more difficult for service teams to reach. In 2026, Austin announced an expanded encampment management system intended to increase cleanups, enforcement coordination, outreach, and long-term maintenance of cleared locations. For those living at these sites, the consequences can reach beyond the loss of a tent. Identification documents, medication, clothing, chargers, work equipment, family photographs, and contact information may be damaged, misplaced, or separated from their owners during repeated movement. Without identification, a person may struggle to enter shelter, replace benefits, obtain employment, fill a prescription, or complete the housing process that officials say the cleanup is supposed to support. Daily sanitation is equally difficult. Public restrooms may close at night, require a purchase, or be located far from where someone is allowed to sleep. Without reliable water, laundry, showers, waste collection, or a secure place to store food, health conditions can worsen. Exhaustion also accumulates when a person must remain alert to theft, violence, weather, police contact, and the possibility of being ordered to move again. Encampment removal may sometimes be necessary, especially when a site creates an immediate danger near traffic, waterways, fires, or public facilities. But removal should not be confused with resolution. A citation does not create a bed. A cleanup does not replace identification. Moving a person beyond public view does not move that person into a home. The real measure is not whether the tent disappears by morning. It is whether the person who slept inside it has somewhere safer to wake up. That answer depends on what happens at the door of the support system. Texas does not lack programs with the word homelessness in their mission. In 2025, the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs approved 88 Emergency Solutions Grant Awards, totaling approximately $9.8 million. The funding can support street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing. On paper, these are several possible paths away from the street. In practice, none of them begins automatically when a person loses a home. The state does not provide these services directly to individuals. Funding passes through cities, counties, housing authorities, and nonprofit organizations, which means access depends heavily on local capacity. A person in Houston may enter a system different from the one operating in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, or a rural county. The available beds, eligibility rules, transportation options, operating hours, and housing inventory can change simply because the person crossed a city or county line. Most communities use coordinated entry to assess people and connect limited housing resources with those considered most vulnerable. The idea is reasonable. Instead of forcing someone to search through dozens of disconnected programs, the system creates a shared entry process. But coordinated entry is a method of prioritizing scarcity. It is not a guarantee that shelter or housing will be available after the assessment is completed. Austin provides a clear example of how narrow the doorway can become. People seeking entry to the ARC shelter are directed to call the Sunrise Homeless Navigation Center during specified weekday hours, and referrals are managed through a wait list. For someone with a charged phone, reliable service, transportation, and a safe place to wait, that instruction may sound manageable. For someone living outside, every step can fail. A phone may be lost, stolen, disconnected, or unable to hold a charge. A person may miss a return call while protecting belongings, searching for food, attending a medical appointment, or being ordered to leave an encampment. Someone living with hearing loss, cognitive impairment, untreated mental illness, or severe anxiety may struggle to complete an assessment that requires concentration and trust. The system may record an unsuccessful contact, while the person experiences another closed door. Even when a bed becomes available, shelter may not fit every situation. Couples may fear separation. A person may refuse to abandon a pet that provides companionship and protection. Storage limits may force someone to choose between shelter and work equipment, documents, clothing, or the possessions that remain from an earlier life. Curfews can conflict with night shifts, while crowded rooms can feel dangerous to people who have experienced assault, trauma, or theft. These rules are not always designed to punish. Shelters must manage safety, staffing, limited space, and the needs of many residents at once. Outreach workers and case managers frequently operate under intense pressure, trying to make a small number of beds and housing units serve a much larger population. The failure is not necessarily found in one worker or one organization. It is found in a system that repeatedly promises access while rationing the thing people need most. A referral is not a home. An assessment is not a lease. A night in shelter may prevent immediate harm, but it does not end homelessness when the person returns to the street after the placement expires. Texas can count calls answered, people contacted, beds filled, and dollars awarded. The harder measure is how many people enter permanent housing and remain there. That distinction must shape every long-term solution. The goal cannot be merely to process homelessness more efficiently. It must be to make homelessness less likely to begin, shorter when it occurs, and less likely to happen again. The answer to homelessness is not one larger shelter, one stricter law, or one temporary funding announcement. Texas is too large, and the people experiencing homelessness are too different for a single program to solve every case. The more useful question is whether each response addresses the reason a particular person lost housing and the barriers preventing that person from returning to it. For a working household facing eviction after reduced hours or a medical emergency, prevention may be the fastest and least expensive intervention. A limited payment for rent, utilities, transportation, or legal assistance can keep a temporary crisis from becoming months of homelessness. Prevention must arrive before the lease is lost. However, assistance offered after an eviction judgment, damaged credit, and the loss of personal belongings may cost more and achieve less. Rapid rehousing can help people whose homelessness is recent and whose income can recover with short-term rental assistance. It can create breathing room, but it cannot make rent permanently affordable or replace long-term care for someone with a serious disability. If the subsidy ends before income becomes stable, the person may face the same crisis again, now with fewer options and another failed housing history. For people experiencing chronic homelessness, permanent supportive housing offers a stronger foundation by combining a lease with continued case management, health care, and behavioral health support. Houston provides evidence that this approach can work at scale. Since 2012, more than 32,000 people have entered permanent housing programs through the Way Home. The regional coalition reports that about 90% were either still participating in the housing program after 2 years or had made a positive exit. That result deserves attention, but it should not be turned into a slogan. Houston's model depends on coordinated agencies, landlords willing to participate, housing units that can actually be leased, and services that continue after the move-in date. Placing someone inside an apartment is an essential achievement. Helping that person remain housed through illness, relapse, isolation, unpaid bills, or conflict is the longer test. Texas also needs treatment that people can reach without first becoming perfectly stable. Addiction treatment, psychiatric care, medical respite, transportation, document replacement, and employment support must connect to housing rather than operate as separate doors scattered across a city. Recovery cannot be demanded as the price of entering a safe place when sleeping outside makes recovery less likely. Affordable housing production remains unavoidable. Case managers cannot place people into apartments that do not exist, and rental assistance cannot stretch indefinitely when lower-cost units disappear. New construction, preservation of older rentals, landlord incentives, zoning reform, and housing tax credits all matter. But units announced are not units completed, and completed units are not necessarily affordable to people with extremely low incomes. Success should therefore be measured carefully. Texas should count how many people avoid eviction, enter permanent housing, remain housed, reconnect with treatment, and return to stable income. It should also examine who falls out of the process and why. A system that studies failure can improve. A system that counts referrals as victories can continue failing while appearing busy. Homelessness will never be reduced through compassion without accountability, but accountability must apply in every direction. Individuals must participate in treatment, respect housing rules, and make difficult changes when they are able. Governments and service systems must provide options that are reachable, safe, and capable of lasting. The real solution begins when both responsibilities meet at the same open door. By tomorrow morning, another Texas sidewalk may be cleared, another tent removed, and another public complaint marked as resolved. The street may look different, but unless the person who slept there has entered safe housing, the crisis has only changed its address. Texas is a state identified with scale, ambition, economic growth, and personal independence. Yet homelessness reveals what independence looks like when there is no affordable room, no reliable transportation, no place to recover from illness, and no support strong enough to interrupt a fall before the street becomes normal. It also reveals the limits of blaming government for every outcome, or blaming homeless people for every condition surrounding them. Some people living outside will reject help. Some will relapse, break rules, damage relationships, or make decisions that deepen their hardship. Those realities must not be hidden. Neither should they be used as permission to ignore everyone who cannot reach shelter, cannot afford rent, cannot manage an illness outside, or has repeatedly encountered assistance that never became housing. The question facing Texas is not whether its cities should tolerate unsafe encampments forever. They should not. The question is, what must happen before and after those encampments disappear? Public order matters, But public order without a housing destination creates an endless cycle of removal, return, and removal again. A successful response will not be measured only by fewer tents in visible places. It will be measured by fewer people entering homelessness, shorter periods spent without housing, safer exits from the street, and fewer returns after assistance ends. It will be measured by whether an older adult can refrigerate medication, whether a veteran can reach treatment, and whether a working family receives help before an eviction becomes a permanent barrier. Every number in this documentary represents a different history, responsibility, and possibility. No policy can erase every mistake, and no act of compassion can replace a functioning housing system. But Texas can choose whether homelessness remains something it repeatedly moves or something it seriously works to end. When the next encampment is cleared, what result should the public demand after the tents are gone? If this documentary helped you see the Texas homeless crisis beyond the sidewalks and statistics, share your perspective in the comments and subscribe for more human-centered stories from across America. May those facing another night outside find safety, honest support, and a real path toward home.